Hey, welcome to In the Chute. This is where Kalen tries to stump the old man or whatever. We'll see what happens. So far, I'm winning every one of them.
So
What do you
this will
got,
be
Kalen?
like 77-0 or something like that. What kind of considerations do you recommend, or do you encourage people to think about when they go to purchase a horse?
Oh,
Whether it's gated or non-gated, it doesn't matter. We come from the gated era, or the gated sphere of the horse world. I know people are going to think, oh, you got to think about the different breed and all that, but I'm just saying blanket, a grade horse,
right.
a
There's
breed
some great
specific
grade
horse.
horses out there. Yeah,
Yeah, it doesn't matter what you're looking for, a draft horse,
right.
whatever you want. Like, what are some of those considerations that you should be thinking of when you go to purchase a horse?
A match.
Okay.
You have to be able to match that horse to your skill level for one. If you are wanting to, and by that doesn't mean that a novice person gets a novice horse. we don't do that. We have, I mean, we've been able to train some horses where novice people had them, but it's how does that horse act? First of all, it's you want to think about your safety issue. That's the
Yeah.
very first thing, right? Um, and so you want that horse to be safe. Any horse is thinking and moving and therefore has risk associated with what can happen. Horses can spook. Horses do spook. Horses spook each other. Hell, they spook themselves. A little, little cogs going along in that noggin of theirs, and all of a sudden they go, "Ooh, what was that?" And it was nothing.
It is
So
funny because you'll see an older horse out in the pasture, and all of a sudden they'll jump up and like they'll fart, and their tail
yeah,
would be swapping, and they'll be running around, and then they turn around after 10 feet, and they're like, oh, that was nothing, and they'll go back to grazing. And it's
there's
like,
a monster in my bed. Yeah.
yeah, weirdo.
So um, that's the very first thing is a safety issue. The second thing to me is what is your level of horsemanship? What is your knowledge? What are your skill sets? And if you are a person who is, let's say, at a novice level and a high level of novice skill, but you're increasing, and you've got a horse that is a very very overly done near death 1 foot on, or well 3 feet I guess, on a banana peels and one in the grave, great horse for a novice, especially if you're learning, and they'll still perform for you. There can be issues there as well, but that's a whole different thing. But let's say you're still increasing your skills and you are very athletic. Everything is working in your favor where you can increase that skill with a horse that is a little bit beyond your skill level. There's a risk time in there, but very quickly you can achieve that next level of ability, and without getting hurt. Again, the safety, the mind of the horse is important there, but this horse is a little bit more lively, a little bit better abilities, a little more athletic, a little younger maybe, that is quicker, and so you're gonna close that gap of that horse is beyond you for a short time, and then you continue to grow. So it's all about what's your mission. What do you want to do?
Yeah.
And safety first, and then matching that ability of that horse. And I've made jokes about that with people who say, "Oh, I've got absolutely no experience with a horse." I'm like, "Great, we'll match you with a horse that doesn't have any horse or people experience too," and laugh about it. But you have to match yourself with your horse, and that's what we try to do when we sell a horse. We evaluate people and say, you know what? I've told me, I said, I think this horse is just too much for you. I'm not
Yeah.
going to. But I've also had people that were in that level of what we just described of, they've been riding for several years and they're really increasing their knowledge and their skills rapidly. It's like, you know what, this horse is a little bit beyond what you would normally want for a horse for yourself, but with what you're doing, this would, possibly fit. And I leave that up to them at that point. With that said, and of course, you go on a ride with them, you watch them, talk about what this horse is capable of ever before they put a foot in a stirrup, but then you back it up with a ride. So those are probably the two biggest things that I would look at. For us, most of the time, age is not a consideration on the horse,
Right.
because if the horse is for sale, they're for sale because they're ready for use. Now, some horses, when they're done, they may be really good, really responsive, but you know what? You still need to have somebody who's got a little quicker responses. That if that horse does the old, slipped a cog and all of a sudden they're spooky and then things get out of hand, you got to be able to control that horse quickly and bring them back down and calm them down. So reassure them, be a herd leader. And some people don't know what a herd leader is. Again, part of my point of being able to have some skills to go with that horse. Um,
What are some
of
other
course,
things that you would consider for the horse in terms of, I guess you could say in the category of accessories, talking about tack, trailer, things like that for if you're just first starting to get a horse. Oh, there's other things that have to go with this horse. So what are some
yeah.
things you would think of that are important for
You,
people as
you know,
they go to consider and make that purchase?
the first thing is the care of the horse. What are
Yeah.
you going to feed it? Where's it going to go? I mean, we've had people that were going to have a horse, and then we find out it would be in a stall. It's like, I don't think this is the horse for you.
Right.
I don't want that horse to do that. Once they're sold, there's nothing you can do. I mean, it's not your horse anymore. But you can try to help that horse out a little bit. And I'm sure there's been cases where situations change for people and horses ended up in a smaller spot than what you thought it should be, or just strictly corralled. So how is the horse going to be cared for? What are you going to feed it? How's it going to be fed? If you're going to feed this thing high protein alfalfa all the time, cause some issues there with behavior and potentially you know issues with just physiological things that can come up. Um, you want to think about that. You want to be a little bit more educated about that. Are you going to feed them 3 pounds of grain a day? Again, same thing with that. Going along with that high protein feed or the type of feed that you're going to give them. So, you know, think about what you're going to put into this horse, how you're going to do it, and buying just cheap hay is not the answer. The same as buying a cheap saddle is not the answer. you
Right.
you kind of start working into the tack on this. You want to do things right. If you want this horse to have some good maintained behavioral issues, treat them right. Don't give them a reason to not want to be with you, and putting a saddle on them that's going to sore them or hurt them every time, goes a long way to nope, don't want to do this anymore. Uh, what kind of bit you're going to put? Headstall is really kind of immaterial. I mean, there's some really thin headstalls. As long as they work, I got no issue with it. It's what you put in their mouth. Do you have the skills, again, to be able to use what's in their mouth without hurting them? You have a novice with a spade bit, not a good idea. They're going to cause some issues there. So, being able again to have the education and the skill set to do what you want to do. Trailering, I've used, and we have some little trailers that small trailers, and we basically use them to train to load, so that they'll load. If they'll load nose, they'll load in anything, and just by throwing a rope over their back and say load up, and they walk into it. I want that. This is small enough. We've had horses that had to duck to get into it, and you're pushing their butt up to the front of it with the rear door. If they'll do that, load in that, you're fine. And then of course you got everything up to big, some goosenecks like we have. So
I'll
those are
go
big
backwards.
considerations.
Now, here's a backwards way of thinking because I just thought of this too. We're talking about things to consider. What's like the last thing that you should say somebody should be thinking about when they go like to go see that
Color.
horse? Yeah, that's what I was gonna say the exact same thing. I was gonna
The
use that as
old-
an example for in
Yeah.
particular, but
Some people want real, they'll want a Palomino because they
yeah,
got to have a Palomino,
yeah.
They're flashy looking, or something with 4 socks. Well, normally with 4 socks come 4 white feet. You want to
Yeah.
take a look at those feet. Are they compatible? They have a pink undertone to them? Are they chalky? And I would stay away from that. I mean, you got to consider all those physiological or physical attributes to the horse as well. One horse I would not buy is a white. I just wouldn't buy a white horse. I'll buy grays. Got no problem having a gray horse as long as that pigment underneath is black. You're fine. I don't want a horse. I don't want white pigment on the skin of that horse, because even though a gray can have white hair, the chances of having some eye issues, some cancers on the muzzle, around the ears and around the eyes where the thin hair is allowing that light to penetrate. That white hair or white skin seems to create some cancerous issues, or could potentially. So Not real wild about white horses. Gray horses, you're still around those eyes. If they're dark, it helps, but some eyesight issues potentially later on. Feet are always, I mean, you're just buying a horse, then you're looking at all the normal stuff. Are their knees straight, their legs straight? How do they move? How's the back? All that kind of stuff. I mean, that's a whole different issue.
So the two lessons when going to get a horse: find one that fits your personality or your ability, and don't worry about color.
Right.
That's what you're saying.
Yeah, except as if they're not white, don't worry about color. And of course, you've got all of the conformational stuff that you want to look at. You don't want to buy a lame horse or a clubfoot
Right.
horse or that kind of stuff. But I mean, that kind of I think goes without saying.
Or you could just settle for one with long ears, and then you got a mule on your hands.
One that's half horse.
Yeah, a half-assed horse. All right, with that, we will put this conversation out to pasture.